Hi everyone, this is Nick Pollock here from Roar Lions Roar. While you're here, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that alert bell so you never miss any of our new content. And if you prefer to listen instead of watch, make sure you check us out on your podcast platform of choice where you can subscribe and download each new episode. Thanks for watching and thanks for listening. Go State! Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Roar Lions Roar. I'm your host tonight, Nick Pollock, and I'm joined by the lovely Mr. Matthew Filipovitz. How you doing, Matt?
Nick, I'm good. I'm fresh off of a trip through Midwest country. I was in Madison, Wisconsin, and I was up in Minneapolis this weekend. And I was really impressed by both towns, Madison especially. I had a great breakfast in Madison, and I had a lot of really good beer in Minnesota. So I'm feeling good and recharged for the season.
I also was in Big Ten country this past week because I was in Oregon, where our new fellow Big Ten brethren Ducks reside. I did not stop in Eugene, but I did drive right through it. Could see the football stadium from the road.
Oh, that's
I didn't
cool.
realize how like elevated it is. Like it's up much higher than everything else around it, which I think is pretty cool.
I got to wander like basically
yeah.
onto the field at Wisconsin. Like their bookstore like lets you right out on there, and like the long snappers were getting some work in. And then like right outside of Minnesota's stadium on campus, they were having practice in the stadium. And I have been to a lot of James Franklin open practices when I was with the blog. I have never in my life heard a coach be not only mic'd up, but have the mic link up to the loudspeaker of the stadium. And PJ Fleck's mic was definitively that, which was wild. That I could just hear everything they were practicing. Yeah, it was. I mean, I could see on the scoreboard, like from my vantage point, what they were working on. Like not like replay wise, but the situation. And I could hear PJ like on the mic. It was wild.
Huh. I feel like there was a blue-white game one year. It might have been Bill O'Brien, actually, not Franklin, but I feel like Bill O'Brien had his mic hooked up so everyone could hear him talk. Like not for the whole game, but for part of it, if I remember correctly.
Interesting. Yeah, that was the first time I'd ever seen that.
That's a cool idea.
Yeah, it was pretty neat. Yeah,
it's a cool idea.
Again, it was wild that like anybody could have just walked right up and heard everything they were working on. It was crazy.
If you are listening to this tonight, I'm sure that you have already listened to all of our positional preview podcasts for Penn State football this year. But if you have not, please make sure you go back and do that. We previewed every position room, including special teams on the roster over the past 2 weeks. Definitely worth your time as we are less than 2 weeks now out from opening day, and we're going to talk about the schedule today in a bit. But first, if you have not already, please make sure you're subscribed to the podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts, or subscribe to us on YouTube where you can watch us as well as listen to us. Please make sure you hit that alert bell as well to get all of our new videos right in your feed the second they go live, which for those of you on the East Coast ends up being pretty early because I'm still not entirely sure if YouTube is accounting for the time change when I post videos. So I post them at 5 a.m. Pacific, or I post them at like 3 a.m. Pacific time. So I don't know when they go live.
It is to your time zone, Nick, because when I'm the one who scheduled, I set it for 5, and they go live at 6 Eastern, 5 Central. So.
Okay. Good to know. Good to know. Like I said briefly there, we are here today to talk about, and if you've read the title of this podcast, we are here to talk about Penn State's 2023 schedule. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to go into necessarily deep dives on predictions or anything today, but what we are going to do is we are going to kind of first start at looking at just some interesting things about the schedule and then break it down into 3 different chunks like we usually do, and just talk about how the season is segmented out in those ways and whether or not it plays into Penn State's advantage or not, the way that things are set up this year. Spoiler alert, I kind of think they are. Matt, do you agree? Quick spoiler.
This is a very, very, very advantageous schedule for the Nittany Lions.
Yeah, very much agree. So let's get right into it with, just some interesting tidbits that I think you and I both noticed about this schedule. Firstly, this is going to be the first season opener at home for Penn State since they played Idaho in 2019. In 2020, they started at Indiana, though I don't really remember much about that game, so let's not talk about it.
Didn't happen.
In 2021, they started at Wisconsin, and in 2022, they started at Purdue. So actually, this is also the first time since 2019 that they're opening with not a Big Ten team, which is also interesting. This is also going to be the 13th time in 14 years that Penn State starts on the road for Big Ten play. They will start this year at Illinois in week 3. I know last year we talked a bit about Pat Kraft went on his kind of media rampage, so to speak, about this. I would expect that when they do make the schedules for 2024, which are in flux right now because of all the stuff with USC and UCLA and Washington and Oregon and all that, I would expect that Penn State will probably start at home, just, with that stat combined with the fact that Kraft has, mentioned it publicly and the fact that Penn State should be pretty good this year. I would expect them to start at
Just
home.
to avoid a call from Pat
Any
Kraft.
thoughts on either of those?
I think they'll move it just to avoid the call.
Any thoughts on either of those things, Matt?
It's cool that, I was at that Idaho game back in 2019. It was really cool to watch just a blowout. Like, it's nice to get an on-ramp. Which Penn State has not had the luxury of having in 4 seasons at this point. It's just exciting that they get to have a little bit of an on-ramp. Not saying West Virginia is going to be Idaho, but a night game in early September against a opponent that at least Penn State's never played in my lifetime, I think is just going to provide a lot of juice. So I think it's going to be a really cool way to kick things off. And, again, I really don't care that much about starting on the road in the Big Ten. You get, as long as you get something at home first, more often than not, to get yourself tuned up a little bit, I'm fine with it. So I'm not really all that worried about it. But overall, I mean, I'm excited that, they get to kick things off in Beaver Stadium for the first time in a while.
Yeah, speaking of, not playing a team in your lifetime, it is kind of fun for a lot of Penn State fans to be playing West Virginia this year. This is a regional rivalry that has existed for a long time, and it's cool to see them get back together. And between them and Delaware, it's kind of cool to see 2, regional type games to open the season. Obviously, Delaware is not a rival, but Penn State recruits the state of Delaware very heavily. That's where we got Chris Godwin from, for those of you that forgot. So it's just a good chance to see them play against a team that, they don't compete for a lot of recruits. Obviously, it's a very different scale we're talking about here, but fun to see them play some regional teams there. Other things I noted here, Ohio State and Michigan not bunched together on the schedule.
Not at all.
Ohio State game is on, not at all. Ohio State game is on October 21st. Michigan is on November 11th. So there are 3 games in between those, which is really nice for Penn State. Did I count that right? 3 games, Ohio State, and then 2 games in between. 2 games in between, excuse me. And then the last thing, this season will once again end with the Land Grant Trophy game, and I'm wondering if that's going to be the last time this happens for a while, Matt.
Ending with the Land Grant Trophy?
Yeah,
probably. What a bummer. As I'm sure people know, we're very attached to this rivalry being played specifically this week. That's a joke. We're not. This is. It's a forced rivalry.
I'm not joking. I love it.
Listen, I love the Land Grant Trophy, but also it's a tier C rivalry game, in the grand scheme of rivalry week.
That's why it's so great.
I guess
that's why it's so great. You have all these huge rivalry games going on, and then you just have this Penn State Michigan State game just stuck in the middle, playing for the world's largest and heavest trophy. I absolutely love it.
Can I offer a counterpoint to that?
I'll be sad if it doesn't happen. Sure.
It would be very funny if that first week is always a crazy hot game. It's always in the 80s. If after a long game that hopefully Penn State wins in 85-degree weather, they then have to carry a 65-pound trophy back to the locker room when they're already exhausted, would objectively just be hilarious. It's cool.
It would be funny.
Yeah, it's cool that, we get to have it one more time. It sucks it's a neutral siter. It's good for Penn State, but in the college football sense, I don't really like neutral site games. And it's great that there's a little bit of a gap between Ohio State and Michigan. One thing I found interesting, Penn State won't play a Big Ten East team until October 21st. And the first divisional game is against Ohio State, arguably the biggest one of the year. That's wild. You're going to end the season playing only divisional rivals. I can't name the last time that happened. You get the non-con and the Big Ten West done by the second weekend of October. I can't name the last time that's happened.
Yeah, I mean, it probably hasn't happened.
Yeah, probably.
But I would wager to say it's definitely a unique quirk of this schedule. Which is, I mean, if you're Penn State, you are expecting to be in a position where you could potentially be tied with one or both of Ohio State and Michigan at the end of this year. So obviously you want to win all your games, but it is nice that you have these non-divisional opponents to kind of ramp up, because in a tiebreaker situation, I can't even pretend to remember what the hierarchy is of what decides what. If you do drop an early game, you would prefer it to be against a non-divisional opponent. So it is nice in that
Mhm.
way.
Oh, for sure. It's going to be nice
Yeah.
that, again, that on ramp, not that it's that long of an on ramp, but it's more than we've seen in the past 3 years. So we'll take the wins where we can get it on that front.
Yeah. So let's get right into it, Matt. Let's talk about what we're going to call chunk
Hmm.
one of the schedule. And that will be versus West Virginia, versus Delaware, at Illinois, and versus Iowa. Quick note, we're not going to go crazy in depth on each of these games. We'll pull a couple notes out about each team, and we'll kind of talk about the chunk at large. But let's start with West Virginia. West Virginia is going into the season with the preseason SP Plus rankings as the number 60 team in the country, the number 42 offense, and the number 84 defense. They do not have a starting quarterback officially named yet, but it is almost certainly going to be Garrett Green. Last year, 43-78, 493 yards, 5 touchdowns, 3 picks, rushed for 276 on the ground, also had 4 receptions
Hmm.
for 32 yards. They'll have a solid running game with CJ Donaldson, who was averaging 6 yards per carry last year before he got hurt. Their center, Zach Frazier, is a second team AP All American. Those just came out today, Monday, August 21st, when we're recording this. They will not have a great defense, though, and they lost several pieces of that defense that allowed 412 yards per game last year. Matt, aside from the regional fun of playing West Virginia, how are you feeling about facing this West Virginia team to start the year?
I love that they get to start with a Power Five opponent, and respectfully, I like that it's one of the, how do I want to word this, bottom feeders of the Power Five.
So there's no need to be
Yeah,
respectful.
I mean, I don't hate. Again, they've never played West Virginia in my lifetime, so I don't have that much hatred for it. So I am intrigued that like they get to go out there against a name brand week one. I love the fact that West
Yeah.
Virginia's best player, maybe overall, is an interior offensive lineman. What are we all worried about right now? It's the defensive interior. It's the defensive tackles. Cool. Trial by fire to kick things off. Here's Zach Frazier, a definitive, probably day 2 guy in the NFL draft. That's really exciting. I love that they get to go in there with that kind of challenge right off the bat and really get a measuring stick for where they are. That's going to be awesome. It's a defense that West Virginia defense that I don't think is going to be all that threatening. They do have a couple of former Penn State guys in there in Lance Dixon and Fatorma Mulba. So it's cool that those guys get to come back to campus. But I think that this can be a game that Penn State struggles in a little bit, but then takes control. Like, will this be the Penn State App State game back in 2018? I don't think so. Like, I think it will, but also will it be the Penn State Idaho game in 19? Probably not. I think somewhere in between. I think this is a game that Penn State can get a good lead in front of, kill clock, make Aller comfortable in his throws, and again, the defense can go out there and set the tone from week one. It felt like for a lot of the Purdue game last year, Penn State was playing on their heels. I'd go back to the same thing about Wisconsin in 2021. I think Penn State can go out there and put their foot on the gas at home. And I think that's really just going to set up for a nice game where, yeah, we're going to see a lot of mistakes. But the biggest jump, coaches always say, happens between week 1 and week 2. So just get through it unscathed. Show me that you're going to be a realistic threat to compete for the Big Ten title in week 1, and I'll call it a win.
Yeah, very much agree. Like you said, I think you said it perfectly in that it's nice to start with like a name, but not a name that's, West Virginia is not terrible,
No.
but they're not going to be very good this year.
I mean, they didn't have bowl
so
practices even. Like Penn State has this.
Yeah.
I mean, think about how important Franklin's always said those bowl practices are. I don't know if that's coach speak or what, but I mean, they went 5-7. They haven't played a football game in what's going to be basically 9 months, 10 months. Like it's going to be a rusty team, and that's intriguing. Like with a new starting quarterback, I love that it's at night at home. Again, I think this is a Penn State team's going to thrive off that environment.
Yeah, should be plenty of energy on the Penn State sideline for that one. Delaware, all due respect, we don't need to talk that much about Delaware.
Cool game.
It's the token non-conference, non-Power 5, just kind of cupcake in there. But yeah, it's way more fun to be doing this against Delaware than like, I don't know, insert directional Midwestern state here. It's way more fun that way.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Then week 3, they head off to Illinois. Illinois will be the number 43 ranked team by SP Plus with the number 82 offense, but the number 7 defense. Of course, their biggest piece last year on offense, Chase Brown, running back Chase Brown, is gone. I believe he's on the Bengals now.
Bengals.
They will still have a very good defense, but they will be without their leader, as Ryan Walter, last year's defensive coordinator, is now the Purdue head coach. They do still have Jerzan Newton at tackle, one of the very best defensive players in all of the country. Mm-hmm. The question for Illinois is really just going to come down to, do they have enough offense to win with Luke Altmaier at quarterback?
Yeah, Altmaier named the starter today. This is a terrifying game. Like, we think about these chaos games in college football, like Georgia almost lost to Missouri last year. Illinois almost beat Michigan last year. Like, this is the chaos game. Thankfully, Penn State, their first road game, like, of a first-time starter has been pretty successful. Like, I know they lost the Pitt game in 2016. That's not a success. But McSorley wasn't the reason they lost that game. The defense kind of choked up in that game. McSorley threw for like 300-something yards. Let's go back to Cliff's first road game as a starter. Maryland 2019. Picked him apart on a short week. So I think it's going to be a good challenge. I think Illinois is definitely a really, really solid team. Can they repeat 8 wins, which was their best season in like a decade, while losing their defensive coordinator? Like, I know they promoted from within, but they lose that guy. They lose their quarterback. They lose a ton of production to the NFL. Like, we'll have to wait and see. This is the first game that like actively scares me. And I think this is going to be a big hinge game for a lot of people. Like, I think if Penn State wins this game, I think maybe you'll see people, like even in our circle, Nick, shift their expectations then from 10-2 to maybe 11-1. Like, I think that'll really move the needle for a lot of people if they're able to get out of Illinois, who's going to be on a extended day's rest because that Kansas game the week before is on a Friday now. I think that's going to really change people's perspective about this team as much as a game against Illinois can in September.
Yeah, it's a really good matchup for what Penn State kind of wants to figure out about themselves and what they need to prove at this point in the season, because no, I say this knowing very well exactly what happened in the 9 overtime game because I was sitting there in the stadium watching it happen. But Illinois' offense should not be good enough to do anything notable against what should be a very good Penn State defense. And because of that, it gives Penn State's offense, like, you don't have to be as scared of the potential threat that the Illinois defense and specifically the defensive line poses to the Penn State offensive line and Drew Allen. It should be a really good chance for all of us to assess where the offensive line is at, and where Drew Allen himself is at in terms of being able to, understand coverages and pressures. It's a very good Illinois defense. They're going to do some interesting things, but understanding how to navigate a pocket that, is going to collapse at times because it's a very good defense. It's just going to happen. So it is a really interesting, like, there's obviously stakes because Illinois is, they're not bad. They are a decent team with a very good defense, but you would hope that the Penn State defense will be able to clamp down enough on that side of the ball that it shouldn't, be too scary. So it's an interesting chance, you can almost feel comfortable watching Penn State struggle and learn, what they need to do to win, knowing that it should still end up as a win in the end, if that makes sense.
Also, Penn State can run the ball. Like, they couldn't run the ball in 2021. Yeah. Like, think about everything that had to go wrong for that game to get out of hand the way it did. Like, Clifford's injured. Yes. PJ's injured. Yes. Defensive tackles are a bunch of true freshmen and redshirt freshmen. Yes. Like, that doesn't exist anymore. And they can run the ball on top of it all. I'm still terrified of that game, but I'm not nearly as scared as some of like, seems like some people are just in the zeitgeist.
Yeah. The week after, they will face a very similar team, but one that is probably better, but they'll be doing it in the friendly confines of Beaver Stadium, and that is Iowa.
I can't wait for this
Iowa,
game.
The number 22 team by SP Plus, the number 79 offense, and the number 1 defense. Of course, the stories with Iowa right now center around, one, the hilarious contract stipulations of Brian Ferentz and his offense needing to score, 26 points per game?
25 points per game. Defensive scores do count. God, this is going to be so funny.
Of course, you have Cade McNamara, former Michigan quarterback, in to helm that offense now. You also have former Michigan tight end Eric All there. The big thing for me, though, when I look at the defense, not that I'm worried about Iowa, replacing production on defense, but you lost Jack Campbell at linebacker. You lost Riley Moss at corner/safety. You lost Kayvon Merriweather at safety. You lost Luke Van Ness off the edge. You still have Cooper DeJean there. He's excellent. You still have former 5-star Xavier, don't know how to say his name, Wangpa. I don't know what letters are silent, which letters are. There's an NW and then there's a KP. So it's hard to say what gets pronounced there and what doesn't. But I'm sure he will be an absolute monster at some point just because that's what Iowa does. Of course, they have great special teams led by Matt's trade target of choice, punter Tory Taylor.
Dude's a baller.
The question for Iowa, as always, is going to be, is the defense dominant enough to cover up what is probably going to be an uninspiring offense, even with, ostensibly a better quarterback in Cade McNamara, probably, than what they've had?
Probably. I mean, Iowa's interesting. Nick, do you think Iowa's the only whiteout-proof offense in the country because of how slow they go? How do you knock
anybody is
something
whiteout proof?
Yeah, I guess, but how do you knock something with no rhythm off rhythm? You know what I'm saying? I mean, let's call it how it is.
I do understand the point.
Yeah, this isn't a team that's gonna go fast, that's gonna get jumpy, from crowd noise. Sure, they'll get jumpy from crowd noise, but it's not like they're gonna get rattled. They're gonna be in a huddle. They're going to be led by an experienced quarterback, even though it's his first year in that system. This is what the whiteout should be. It should be a night game. It sucks it's not Ohio State. It sucks it's not Michigan. I understand the frustration there, but this is the future of the Big Ten when Fox has the rights to the big games. You want your biggest night game then to be the whiteout, and it's cool that it's an Iowa team that I have to imagine James Franklin and all the guys still left over from that 2021 team want to beat into the dirt. We've seen James Franklin be angry and be sassy. I think the best example of that was Michigan State back in 2016. Where I forget who it was, but somebody scored a pretty unnecessary touchdown. And if you remember that 2015 game, Mark D'Antonio let his offensive lineman score on senior day against Penn State. I think we could be that level of
which was admittedly awesome.
It was pretty cool. Yeah, 2015 season was cursed. But I can see Petty James coming out here, and I can see Penn State,
for sure,
taking control of this game early. But also, again, I'm terrified that Iowa loves to mess things up. And again, how do you throw something with no rhythm off rhythm? That's going to be an interesting game. And again, I'm glad that Penn State gets them at home. I'm glad it's going to be nice weather, hopefully. It won't be freezing cold where Penn State will be struggling to air it out. And that's one of the ones I'm most excited for on the schedule overall.
Yeah. Overall, Matt, how are you feeling about this first chunk here? It's a little on-ramp with a, not great West Virginia team, Delaware, and then you got two really tough defenses in a row. How are you feeling overall here?
I think it's great. I think Penn State can talk a lot of smack because three of their first four opponents are Power 5 opponents. Not many teams can say that. I love easy non-conference games. I think there's a lot of value. I think Michigan last year proved that there's a lot of value in those games because everybody remembers them for winning the Big Ten. Nobody remembers them for beating UConn and East Carolina. I think they have to go 4-0 in this stretch. I think that's the expectation, and I think they can easily do that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Speaking of Power 5 teams, there's a lot of really great merchandise you can get for Power 5 teams and non-Power 5 teams over at homefieldapparel.com. Homefield, they've been our sponsor since we converted to a podcast only medium here at Roar Lions Roar. I'm wearing one of their shirts right now, the wrestling shirt, for my money, the best shirt that they make. I absolutely love it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Well, that's not fair. Not overall, because there's a lot of really cool shirts. Definitely the coolest Penn State thing.
I think mine's the coolest one. I got the Script Nittany Lions logo tee on right now. I think that one's elite.
I think we can let the watchers of the video decide then. But if you are listening to this podcast, if you like either of the shirts that we are wearing or anything else you can find at homefieldapparel.com, we have a wonderful chance for you to save a nice chunk of money here. If it is your first time ordering or your first time ordering with a new email account at homefieldapparel.com, if you use the code RLR23 at checkout, all caps, all one word, if you use that code at checkout, you can get 15% off of your first order, no matter how much is in there. You could get every single piece of Penn State attire they have, or you could go on and check out any of the other incredible offerings they have for pretty much any school you can think of. I know Matt has several shirts that are not Penn State related.
This is true.
I have a couple of Washington State shirts that I absolutely love. They have a lot of great stuff. You know about Home Field. You know how much time they put into making quality products that are as comfortable to wear as they are enjoyable to look at. They dig deep into the history books to find all the great stuff that makes your school unique, and they toss them on shirts and joggers and sweatshirts, and I think they have hats.
They do have
hats, right?
They do have hats.
Yeah. So anything you could think of, they're going to find something that makes you feel proud to go to your school, and they're going to find things that, really hit you deep as an alum or just a longtime fan of the school. So make sure you head over to homefieldapparel.com, use the code RLR23 on your first order for 15% off. Get all that holiday shopping done early here in August so you can spend the next, 3-4 months of your life doing nothing but watching Penn State football. And that will continue with chunk number 2 on the schedule, Matt.
I think that was elite.
That
well
starts,
done. Good ad read.
Thank you. That starts going at Northwestern, who
I can't wait for this game.
We'll talk about that.
Oh, I'm amped for this one.
We'll talk about that in a moment. Then they have the bye week. Then they face UMass at home. Then they will go to Columbus to take on the Buckeyes, and then they will face Indiana at home. That's the next 5-week, 4-game chunk here. Let's talk about what the hell is happening over at Northwestern. They are the number 85 team per SP Plus, the number 124 offense, the number 29 defense. Obviously, they have been all over the news for as many possible reasons as you could hope not to be on the news for. Tough times over there in Evanston, Matt.
Yeah, my one comment on this game is that Evil Matt, friend of the blog, Stanley, and several other friends are coming for this game, and we're going to have a rip-roaring time over at Ryan Field. Northwestern will not be good. Again, you never want to overlook any opponent. This is any given Saturday, something crazy can happen. But I feel confident in that being a pretty friendly PSU crowd, especially for like a Big Ten West opponent standards. Be a fun game. I'm excited.
How much are those tickets going to run you?
I haven't bought them yet because I'm waiting until the last minute. Because I fully expect to buy them on my train ride up to Evanston. It's like a 40-minute train ride. Probably like, I don't know, $20. That was what I'm hoping for. So
that high?
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens as the game gets closer. But I'm excited for that game. I think that game is going to be interesting. I'm excited that I'll be able to see Penn State in person. And none of us know what Northwestern is going to be. Like, that whole staff kind of got blown up. And I just can't imagine it's going to be anything all that impressive.
Yeah, it's going to be trash. I hate Northwestern. I'm glad to see them suffer.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, don't feel bad about it. After that is the bye week.
The second of 3 consecutive bye weeks, if we want to call it that.
This is a really interestingly timed bye week for me, Matt, because if there is one critique, there's 2 large critiques of the James Franklin era at Penn State. One being that they've had a tendency to let one loss turn into 2 at times, especially when it's against one of the big names, Ohio State or Michigan. But the other one is that his teams have not always played particularly well out of the bye. Mm-hmm. Well, there are not many easier opponents to face out of a bye week than UMass, who will be the one goes into the season as the number 133rd last ranked team by SP Plus, the number 130 offense, the number 114 defense. It does not get worse in terms of, or does not get easier in terms of what opponent you could be playing in that situation. This seems kind of perfect for what we know of James Franklin football teams.
I have never seen, like, we know about SoCon Saturday, that second last weekend of November for SEC teams. I have never seen a Big Ten team get essentially 2 bye weeks in a row, 3 if you want to count Northwestern, and a tune-up game at home in the middle of the season. I can't imagine anything better than that for Penn State. It gives you essentially 2 weeks to get healthy. It gives them a chance to go out there and let some young guys prove that they can play ahead of going into what's going to be a tough road matchup against Ohio State. This is awesome. I'm probably going to go to this game. I'm really looking forward to it. It's homecoming. Generations of Greatness uniforms come back out for this, and there's not much to be excited about except for the fact that Penn State gets to play football and probably stay healthy and probably score a lot of points in the middle of October. And not very often do we get that luxury.
Yeah. And the main reason that it's so important that they get this bye and then the easiest possible game you could think of right after that is because the week after they will head to Columbus to Ohio State. Ohio State will enter the season as the number 2 ranked team by SP Plus, the number 1 offense and the number 12 defense. Biggest things right now with Ohio State. Who's going to play quarterback? Is it going to be Philadelphia product Carson McCord, or is it going to be former 5-star number 1 overall recruit on 3 Sports, Devin Brown? What are you going to get out of, and more importantly, does it even matter because they're throwing the ball to Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Ibuka, both named first team AP All-Americans. Think about that. Both of their receivers, their top 2 receivers, are named first team All-Americans.
Absolutely
That
wild.
is absurd.
Absolutely wild.
On the defense, you have Tommy Eichenberg at linebacker, Liam Eichenberg at linebacker. He should be pretty good. Travion Henderson will be back this year for the running game. He is a big X factor here for me because he is one of the most dynamic runners in the country when he is healthy. Mm-hmm. He was not healthy terribly often last year. No. But there are still questions on the defense with Ohio State, as there have been for the last couple of years. There are significant questions on the offensive line. They lost several guys, and it wasn't quite as good last year, that unit, I would say, and they seem poised to take a step back. How much is that going to matter here? This is probably the best chance Penn State has had to beat Ohio State in Columbus since 2017.
Nick, that's legally speaking, that's acknowledging the window. I'm going to put that out there and get in front of it. Legally binding. I'm not a lawyer. No matter who it is, Kyle McCord or Devin Brown, somebody's not going to be excellent at some point for Ohio State.
Did I say Carson McCord before?
You did. But I think you're thinking Carson back at Georgia.
No, I'm thinking of the person I coach with, whose name is Carson McCord. So thank you for correcting
Carson
me.
McCord, not a sponsor. But Kyle McCord
not a sponsor. Great guy, not a sponsor.
But I said, let's say, listen, the standard has been Justin Fields, top 10 pick, CJ Stroud, first round pick, number 2 overall pick. Somebody's not going to be that high level. Like, nobody hits that often. You could say, Ryan Day and Ohio State are just super special. I don't buy it. I think either McCord or Brown will be excellent, just because I think that Ohio State very rarely has a true whiff at quarterback, and they're not going to whiff on 2 guys who are top 50 prospects. They have good enough receivers. If Penn State's going to get them, I've been saying it, it's going to happen in a window. I can't think of a better window than when Ohio State is breaking in a new quarterback. Their offensive line could be mediocre, and Penn State is maybe one of the best edge rusher groups in the country. It just feels like this is their chance to get them. I'm optimistic. I'm hopeful, but I just hope that they keep it competitive. I think they could have won that game back in 2021, and as long as Penn State doesn't turn it over, I think they have a pretty good shot.
Yeah, I would agree. Turnovers have been the big differentiator in this game the last couple of years. I
think it's 6 turnovers to Ohio State's 1 in the last 2 years.
Yeah. I think you are a bit more on the side of
2 loss Ohio State
feeling. Yeah, you're a bit more down on Ohio State, whereas I'm still pretty firmly in the camp of I'll believe Ohio State isn't, undefeated level good when I see them not be undefeated level good. But I don't think we're terribly far off there. Of course, we'll talk about Ohio State plenty more as we approach that game. This chunk will end with a home game against Indiana. Indiana goes in the season as the number 83 ranked SP Plus team, number 71 offense, number 100 defense. Boy, that's got to make Tom Allen's skin just crawl. They do not have a quarterback named yet. They are still trying to choose between Tennessee transfer Taven Jackson or Brendan Sorsby. Neither really inspires much confidence. No. This is just, simply put, not a good Indiana team, and the program is in a pretty tough spot right now.
Yeah, it's tough to be Indiana. I would probably be more surprised than not if Tom Allen was coaching this game. I just don't think he's going to make it this far into the season. It's tough. Yeah, 2020 was a long time ago. Michael Penix isn't walking back through that door. I just hope Indiana can stay competitive in the non-con. I like their fans a lot. I think it's a cool program, but I think it's just going to be, especially at home for Penn State, I think this one's going to be a nice, easy, hopefully cakewalk.
Is it controversial to say that the opening of the transfer portal has hurt Indiana more than any other team in the Big Ten?
I mean, who are their big names to like go? I think Penix kind of needed a change of scenery after all those injuries. Like, I don't think,
That was going to
yeah,
happen
I don't think
anyway.
you can blame that on the portal. Like, I can't think of like any other really big name they've lost over the years. I mean, Tom Allen seems like a guy.
I don't think it's necessarily in that. I don't think it's necessarily in that they have lost guys to the portal. I just don't see Indiana really being a destination in the portal.
Yeah,
is more where I'm leaning.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to play major college ball, Indiana, I'm sure, is appealing for somebody who just wants to play in the Big Ten. Like, I understand that,
Sure.
but I don't think very many of those guys truly exist.
Yeah. So chunk 2 here, Matt. At Northwestern, bye versus UMass. At Ohio State versus Illinois, Indiana. I'm not going to ask you to make a prediction about the Ohio State game right now, but this seems like as favorable of a kind of schedule sandwich you could make before and after the Ohio State game as possible.
Yes, this is the dream. This is exactly what the doctor ordered for Penn State. I think it lets you go into Ohio State very healthy and come off of it. No matter what happens, it's going to be a little bit of a coming down from a high, and I think it's going to be very nice to have Indiana to lead into the final stretch of the season. And I'll make a prediction. I'll make a prediction.
Okay, go for it.
For this to be a success, Penn State has to go 3-1. But also, I kind of view it as Ohio State and Michigan are kind of a 2-game season within the season in window years. So I would like Penn State to hold their loss off as long as they can. I just don't think that a team in the current Big Ten East can go 12-0. I just don't think it's possible. So if they lose that game to Ohio State, then they have to go 4-0 to end it. But if they beat Ohio State, they can afford to go 3-1 in this last chunk.
Yeah, let's talk about that chunk here. Starts with at Maryland, then they return back to Beaver Stadium to play Michigan, then they stay home to play Rutgers, and then they finish the year at Michigan State. I'm sure the weather will be sunny and perfect, 70 degrees.
It will be. It's indoors.
The season will end for. Oh, right, that's right. I keep forgetting that. It's such a foolish decision by Michigan State to sign off on that. Their biggest advantage is gone.
It feels like Mel Tucker might need to be close by to an international airport, just so maybe that's why they put it there.
Love it.
They can't afford to fire.
All right, so they truly cannot. So at
not enough NF Tuck sold.
At Maryland is always
weird,
always interesting in terms of sometimes they tell the students they don't have to go to class that day if it's on a Friday, and then they get blown out 51 to. Did Maryland score in that game?
I think it was 56-0. It was something crazy.
I think so. Sometimes they play in a back and forth game at M&T Bank Stadium that somehow ends with Penn State winning, and even though it ends up feeling like a loss, there's just always interesting things. It's just the way this Maryland team is built. Like, they are built to play weird games because they have lots of they're kind of like the college Arizona Cardinals in a way. They have a lot
thing to call somebody.
Well, I know. Not this year as much because the Cardinals have now they no longer have DeAndre Hopkins, no longer have JJ Watt, etc. But
they got rid of Trace McSorley.
They have a lot of names. They have a lot of names, but it just kind of feels like they're playing fantasy football while everyone else is trying to build a football team. Talia Tagovailoa should be great. He's a very good quarterback. I think if he, had gone to an SEC program, as was rumored in the transfer portal this offseason, he could be setting himself up to be, probably not a high NFL draft pick because he's not quite big enough, but certainly like maybe a third rounder. Yeah. Like, he's got the talent. He's just has to stay healthy. Problem is that's not very easy to do behind a Maryland offensive line that doesn't do a great job protecting him. But, defensively, they've got some names. Jordan Phillips from Tennessee is there on the defensive line. You have former Penn State target in the recruiting game, Jayshawn Barham at middle linebacker. I should also mention Maryland, 41 overall SP+, 47 offense, 27 defense.
Pretty good.
Much better than I expected, honestly. But they're just a weird team, and I kind of I will continue to believe Ohio State is good until they're not. I'm going to continue to believe that Maryland is not fully put together until they are.
Nick, do you know who Maryland's offensive coordinator is?
Oh, I think I do. It's
Don't you dare look this up.
I'm not looking it up. Oh
I think this is
no.
his fourth job in 4 years.
They have the funniest coaching staff, and I'm so upset that I can't think of. Oh, just tell me. I know who it is, but wait, is it? It's
It
Gaddis.
is Josh Gaddis.
Yeah, it's Gaddis.
That worked out
Yeah.
well for Miami. Him as offensive coordinator. Maybe it'll be different at Maryland. Maryland's a good team. Mike Locksley has built that program up. I'm impressed with what he's done. He's recruited well. I like his staff a lot. Gaddis withstanding. If Maryland's going to get one of the big three, it feels like this is the year for them to do it. I'm terrified that Penn State is going to be that one that they get, considering they're one of the two that go to College Park. I think.
Do you like their coaching staff?
I do. I think Locksley's a really good coach.
Their coaching staff feels like they're playing fantasy football.
Yeah, but what is Maryland going to do to be successful? Like, clearly they're not going to ever be able to compete with everybody else. They're trying something different, which I give them a lot of credit for. They're going out there and they're.
But are they? Are they? I feel like they're just building a recruiting staff, and they already can recruit just fine.
I guess. I don't know. I think there's enough in that room, enough smart minds in that coaching staff to get something done. I think they probably win 8-9 games, which is a great season for Maryland. I don't think Tua's gonna. I don't think Tua's gonna see ghosts again like he did against Penn State last year. Tua was the most lost, or not Tua. Talia was the most lost I've ever seen.
I was gonna say, do they call him Tua? Could we call him Tawa?
Sorry.
Just reverse
little
it?
Tua was the most lost I think I'd ever seen a quarterback in a college game against Penn State last year. Like, he threw it to an offensive lineman at one point on a check down, which was hilarious. But I don't think that's going to repeat itself. So I'm a little bit scared of this game. This feels like the come up and bite you, like what Iowa was to Michigan back in 2016 to let Penn State win the Big Ten title. Like, this kind of feels similar to that. So we'll have to wait and see how this all thing shakes out. Maryland's a team I'm very excited to watch early on in the year, but I think Penn State fans travel well for that game. If Maryland's defensive line is what I think it is, I think Penn State can control that game pretty easily. But definitely that and Illinois, I think, are the two biggest like trap games on the schedule.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons the Maryland game is such a trap game, aside from the fact that it is on the road, is that the week after Penn State returns home to face Michigan. Michigan, the number 3 team in SP+, the number 7 offense, the number 4 defense. We know that Penn State plays much better against Michigan when they are in State College than when they are in Ann Arbor. The question is, let's not go any deeper than this here, Matt. Can Penn State beat this Michigan team this year?
Yes. Nick, real quick, what was the score of the Penn State-Michigan 2018 game at Michigan? Do you remember?
Oh, goodness. 2018? Mm-hmm. Oh, God. Was that the... Tell me about that game so Will I Levis, remember what happened.
Tommy might have played a little bit. Yeah, Tommy came in there at one point.
Oh,
yeah.
God. Oh, yeah, that was bad. They scored 50?
It was 42-7. So it was a worse blowout than the one Penn State had last year. And Penn State followed that performance up by beating Michigan at home. I think they can do that again. They did. I really hate this idea that Michigan is light years ahead. They're about even in the blue chip ratio. Penn State plays Michigan close. They had them beat in 2021, despite only scoring one offensive touchdown. Like, one blown coverage by a true freshman, Kalen King, really is what the difference. I think Penn State can beat Michigan at home. That game terrifies me. I think this is the best version of Michigan we'll have ever seen. But I like Penn State's odds at home to at least play them close and hopefully get a dub.
Yeah, should be interesting to see where J.J. McCarthy and that offense are at by the time they head out here. There'll be only a couple games left in the season, so both these teams should be firing on all cylinders at this point. Mm-hmm. After the Michigan game, 2 fairly nondescript games to finish out the season for Penn State. They'll be at home against Rutgers, number 77 SP+, 99 offense, 60 defense, and then they'll be in the neutral site game, and it's in Indianapolis, right?
Ford Field in Detroit. Is where
that's right. Ford Field in Detroit against Michigan State. Michigan State, number 46 overall team, better than I thought. 62 offense, number 30 defense. Same basic questions as always with Michigan State. Who's going to step up? Is how much production are they going to get out of the guys that they've brought in the transfer portal? Are they finally going to start getting production from some of the guys they've actually recruited as high schoolers? This should be about the time where Mel Tucker starts to, get some results there. Mm-hmm. As all things considered, fairly boring last two games for Penn State.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Yeah. I think Rutgers is the number 5 team in the East. I think Michigan State's the number 6 team in the East.
Yeah. It's just not a lot to say here. We'll say more about them when we get to them, but right now, maybe if either of these teams show something different over the first, however many weeks of the season, it'll be more interesting. But as of now, seems fairly nondescript.
Both could be in wounded
Overall,
animal mode just to make a bowl game and like save their coach from moving to an even hotter seat. So that is a bit of a concern, but overall, I think Penn State should win both of these games, and it's a pretty nice off ramp to hopefully an additional 13th game in December.
Overall, Matt, it is a pretty good schedule for Penn State. We have the nice build-up. We have the couple of tough defenses early to test them, see what they're made of. Then things cool off. Nice on-ramp to Ohio State. Indiana and Maryland, difficult games in their own way, but not, terribly threatening. Then you go into the Michigan game at home. Should be much better as far as playing in Ann Arbor. And then 2 games against teams that are, not train wrecks, but not particularly threatening to end the year. It sets up pretty well for Penn State, wouldn't you say?
This is the dream schedule in the window. And I'll shut up about the window because I know people hate it. But this is, I mean, like, the window goes back to, like, this is the talent and this is the year to do it. Like, Ohio State has QB questions, and I get you go on the road, and I get it's in the middle of the season, but who's to say they're going to be really resolved by then? Like, Michigan could be banged up by the time November rolls around with the style of football they play. There's just so many things. This just feels like the perfect schedule for me. And listen, it all starts with getting through that first 4 games undefeated. And if they do that, I really believe the sky's the limit for this team.
Yeah, it seems to be, if James Franklin could have, made the schedule game for game on his own in his office one day, it probably would look fairly close to this. Maybe the Maryland game would be earlier in the year and swap another easier team right in front of Michigan, but it's pretty darn good for Penn State. We will talk plenty. Well, before we do that, Matt, any other final thoughts on the schedule here?
No, it'll be, listen, Penn State plays football next week. I am amped. I want these next 12 or so odd days to fly by, and I just cannot wait to see toe hit leather here.
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. We will talk plenty more. We still have our preseason over-under predictions, of which I am the reigning champ. That podcast is still coming up. We will post that later this week, I believe. Yes. Maybe next week. It's coming soon regardless.
Yeah. Nick, you've seen the numbers. You've seen the numbers. So I this is the first year you're going to actually prep. And you dominated the game last year without any prep. So I'm excited to see where you fall on these.
I know I haven't looked at the numbers closely yet. I know where they are now, so I can look at them, but I haven't done it quite yet. I didn't have time to start what I wanted to work on yet. But in case you have not listened, like I said at the top, if you have not listened to any of our other preview content so far, please make sure you go back, check out all the previews for our positional rooms, all the way from quarterback to special teams. Nice little 30-ish minute chunks on each group. Very informative, help have you ready for the season. Make sure you visit homefieldapparel.com. Use the code RLR23 for 15% off of your first order. If you have not done so already, take advantage of that. They're wonderful sponsors. We love working with them. And finally, make sure you are subscribed to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, or subscribed and have alerts clicked on YouTube where you can watch us as well. We are very, very excited to continue previewing Penn State football. And before you know it, we will be talking very specifically about West Virginia, and we will all be sitting down together to watch that West Virginia game, whether you are in the stadium or you are on your couch. We can't wait. We're sure that you can't wait either. So let's call it a day. For now, Matt, for myself, Nick Pollock, for my co-host, Matt Filipovitz, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Go State.
Go State.